Assembling your X-Pert Build-A-Pole. Your pole should come with 6 pieces: an 8-foot A-pole, an upper extension, a Pro Tool kit, competition micro base, X-joint, extended top insert, a block ball mount, or a vaulted ball mount. Let's begin assembling your Build-A-Pole. Loosen the 2 static spinning screws at the very bottom of the 8-foot A-pole by turning them counterclockwise with the 5mm hex key. Slide the competition micro base into the bottom of the 8-foot A-pole. Line up the 2 static spinning screws with the X's etched on the base. Tighten these screws clockwise using the 5mm hex key. Rotate the pole to tighten the screw on the other side, making sure that it is still lined up with the etched X. The X-joint connects the 2 pole pieces and is one of the most important parts of your pole. Use the 6mm hex key to turn the X-joint screw counterclockwise or in the same direction as the contract arrow in order to contract the X-joint. X-joints need to be contracted in order to connect or separate the pole pieces. To connect the upper extension, put a contracted X-joint into the 8-foot A-pole, lining up the X-joint screws with the hole on the A-pole. Put the upper extension onto the contracted X-joint, lining up the hole on the extension with the X-joint screw. Put the short end of the 6mm hex key completely into the X-joint screw. Make sure the hex key is fully inserted. Turn the hex key clockwise to expand the X-joint. It is important to alternate between the screws so both ends of the X-joint will expand evenly. Make sure there is no gap between the pole pieces. If there is a gap, contract the X-joint. Then push the pole pieces together while tightening the X-joint screws, alternating from top to bottom screw. It is critical to tighten the X-joint screws very firmly. Use the ratchet and 6mm socket provided in the Pro Tool kit for final tightening. Use the 4mm hex key to remove the locking screw on the extended top insert by turning it counterclockwise. Then use the 6mm hex key to remove the retaining washer underneath the locking screw. Put the contracted top insert into the upper extension by lining up the expansion screw with the hole on the extension. Then use the 6mm hex key and turn it clockwise to tighten the screw. This will lock the extended top insert into the extension. Loosen the 3 black adjuster locking screws by using the 5mm hex key. These 3 black screws are located above the adjuster cover, about 8 inches from the bottom of the A-pole. Do not loosen the 3 small silver adjuster cover screws. If using the optional pin and insert on the competition base, screw the pin into the hole on the underneath side of the base. Using a 3/8 inch drill bit, drill the hole approximately 1/2 inch deep. Then screw the insert into the hole using an 8mm hex key, not provided, until it is flush to the floor. Block and vaulted mounts. The ceiling mount must be drilled to a solid surface by a qualified person. The screws are not provided, so you can use 5/16 inch screws, which are best suited for your ceiling material, whether it is wood, concrete, steel, etc. The screws should be at least 2.5 inches to 3 inches long. But once again, the length will depend on your exact setup. Lift the pole upright and position it directly under the ceiling mount. Don't be shy to ask for a friend for help. Turn the entire pole counterclockwise to adjust the pole into the ceiling mount. Depending on clearance, you may need to lift the pole on an angle and guide the top insert into the ceiling mount. Keep turning until the pole is barely tight. The base must still be able to shift for leveling purposes. Level the pole. Magnetic levels are the easiest to use by walking around the entire pole. If it is unlevel, move the lower part of the pole until it is leveled. Do final tightening by turning the pole counterclockwise using only one hand to make sure the pole is not over tightened. You want to turn it until you are unable to turn it further with one hand. Then use two hands to rotate 2 to 3 more complete turns. It is very important not to over tighten the pole to the ceiling. The pole should be tightened just to the point where the base does not shift. Test this by giving the pole a hard shake back and forth. If the pole shifts, re-level it and rotate 1 to 2 more complete turns, then retest. Once properly tightened, make sure the adjuster cover keyhole is lined up with the vertical line on the adjuster. Warning: if the keyhole is not aligned, threading damage can occur. Now tighten the 3 black adjuster locking screws very firmly. Use the ratchet and 5mm socket provided in the Pro Toolkit for final tightening. Now your pole is ready to use. Test your pole on spin mode. Loosen the 2 static spinning screws which are aligned with the X's on the micro base by turning the 5mm hex key counterclockwise. Spin the pole with your hand, and if it does not spin well, it is most likely over-tightened. To disassemble your X-Pert pole, make sure your pole is on stationary mode. Loosen the 3 adjuster locking screws by using the 5mm hex key and turning it counterclockwise. Turn the entire pole clockwise to loosen it from the ceiling mount. Depending on clearance, you may need to lift the pole on an angle to remove the top insert from the ceiling mount. The pole can be kept assembled for easy setup in the future, but the X-joint should be tightened frequently.